Last year, I did a video called Hollywood's Continuous Problem with Female Characters, and this was a big breakdown that explained all of the problems right now from Hollywood in how they depict female characters. And I talked about the prominent problem that's been talked about a lot of the strong female character, how every female character has to be strong, how they have to represent all women in a sense, and meaning that when characters were more complex over the years or more flawed, then they would get a lot of criticism. And that the main talking point from Hollywood about female characters would always be about their agency. A female character has to have agency. That's the top word. And I covered how claiming that a female character has agency has been used even to cover up actually exploitative depictions of female characters in media. Like I used Sam Levinson's The Idol as an example, and how he tried to use the term agency in order to defend his very exploitative, misogynistic work. And my ultimate conclusion with that video is I just want female characters to be able to be portrayed in any which way. Whether or not being strong is a criticism of the character depends on if that character is supposed to be strong, if it's supposed to be a character that's a hero that you're supposed to look up to, or if it's not. And that I just want freedom for how these characters are portrayed rather than this rigid idea of agency that's being used to cover up actual negative portrayals. Scrutiny should happen if a character is being badly written or someone is actually being exploitative, but not for a female character merely being portrayed as a person. But it's been nearly a year since that video, and a lot has changed, and I wanted to talk about that because while I definitely see things that are changing in terms of the depiction and the rigid depiction of female characters in media, I wouldn't necessarily say it's for the better. In fact, I think that things might be getting messier than ever and more confusing than ever, because in that video that I described, it was pretty straightforward to describe the problems with female characters, but now it's just really confused. But strap in, we have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to go over. Let's get started. The first trend I've been noticing is the strong female character is gone, or at least as we knew it. For those who don't know, strong female character used to not be a negative term. It used to be a term to mean a character who is tough, who is heroic, who is an action hero, if you will. But the word strong female character became tainted because it was used so much to defend so many bad portrayals of female characters. It became a word used to describe one-dimensional female characters, characters with no personality, characters who were basically cardboard cutout ideas of feminist characters or role models for little girls, you know, like Captain Marvel or Rey. They didn't have any character. They were pushed in people's faces really hard. They were given the label Mary Sue, which is a trope in fiction, actually first used to describe fan fiction, where a character doesn't have any actual flaws. And it's that type of character that I've kind of seen go away, because I haven't seen a character who's sort of the Captain Marvel archetype in a while. At least in the past year, I haven't seen anything push that strong, and we can go to the Marvels for that and a movie like Madam Web. These were female superhero movies, and very, very bad ones. However, they didn't really have the problems before. In fact, the Marvels, I was surprised, actually got really close to fixing Captain Marvel's character. It had a plot where she made a huge mistake, and this is perfect. This could actually fix her character, but they didn't lean into it enough because the movie was just a disjointed mess overall. And Madam Web, horrible movie, but it just did not push the idea of these strong female characters that you had to like in any way, shape, or form. And so that is just a change I've been seeing across the board, that we're not really pushing for these quote-unquote strong female characters anymore. The impossibly perfect strong female character with essentially no character apart from being a cardboard cutout of what the producers thought at the time would be the ultimate example for little girls everywhere. So we're away from that era, sort of. I'll get into it in a minute, but we are moving away from that era. But with that, I'm seeing some other negative things come out, because instead of praising that we're now moving away from that very, very stiff, very, very bland trope of a female character, I'm seeing a lot of hate being levied at the idea of female action heroes in general, like a knee-jerk reaction. And I noticed this years ago, starting with the movie Prey. Now, that starred a female action hero, and the movie is so-so, and the character is so-so. People have different opinions on it. But what I noticed in that movie, and forgive me, this was years ago, I didn't keep any receipts, but I noticed that when it came out, there were people saying things about the film that weren't true, things that the female character did that weren't true. At the very least, she wasn't a character who was just born with all these skills and never failed. She failed in the movie, but there were people saying that she didn't fail and that she beat everything up herself. And I'm like, that's not entirely accurate to the movie. And that was just a first little noticing of this. But it's really grown over the years, and it's gotten to a point where I feel like I need to say something about it, because the Marvels and Madame Web, they did not have characters that they tried to profess were overly perfect or could solve anything or were trying to put men down or anything or were trying to preach a message. It was just very, very traditionally bad superhero storytelling, and Madame Web was absolutely hilarious. But I noticed that people, and I guarantee that a lot of these people didn't even watch the movies because they made like nothing at the box office, were trying to project that on them. And the Marvels did not do anything in its marketing, or what little it had, to try to antagonize people like that. Not that I saw, but people came after it for those reasons all the same. And with Madame Web, as an example, the same thing happened with it, where, for example, there was a lie spread around that actress Isabella Merced were blaming people for not seeing the movie and calling them names and blaming men for not seeing the movie. And it got so prominent, this rumor that she had said nothing, that she actually came out on Instagram and I was like, why are people spreading things around that I didn't even say over this movie that she openly bashed herself? And so that was just a continuation of me seeing that now anything that gets female action heroes is getting a lot of hate. And that happened this year with the movie Furiosa, where Furiosa was already a pre-established character, and she's not at all the strong female Mary Sue archetype. Like, she struggles, she has mentors, she doesn't just magically become amazing and do everything herself. But I saw a lot of people saying that the movie must have bombed because it was a girl boss film. Like, that's the big word right now. Like, it's a girl boss, it's a girl boss. And no one who's marketing these movies, or at least not that I've seen, has been using that term, but it's used by people to criticize these kinds of characters. And I just see a knee-jerk reaction to all of these female action heroes now. I mean, we're going to talk about X-Men 97 a little bit later, but I was reading a review from a third-party site about X-Men 97, and one of his criticisms for it was it focused too much on the female characters in the beginning. I mean, first of all, that's absolutely not true if you watch the show, but I'm like, X-Men, if you read the comics, if you read the famous runs, has always had a clear focus on the female characters. Like Chris Claremont, who made X-Men popular, his favorite character to write was Storm. She got the most word bubbles out of anybody in that run. This is what I'm talking about, is that there's a new hate for female heroes in general. And the reason why it's such a problem is in the beginning, when we were getting these badly written female characters, people would always go to examples like Sarah Connor and Ellen Ripley and all of those kinds of characters to say, no, these are the good, strong female characters. Princess Leia, these are the good, actually strong female characters who actually you can root for, who actually are tough in their situations and are actually well-drawn, well-developed characters. But now it's so bizarre. I saw a post this year of someone using Sarah Connor as a bad example. Like, well, women think they can be like this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? First of all, Terminator is a little bit more of a male-skewing brand than some of these other things, like Star Wars and Marvel, I think, appeal a bit more to both genders in general. However, I'm just like, how did we go from all these years of Sarah Connor being used as the archetype for strong female characters and how they should be written, to now her saying that she's a bad example? And I've just seen a lot of this lately. And I'm like, what has happened? Because when all of this started, everyone was like, yeah, it's not about having female action heroes, it's about the writing. And for me, that is what it's always been, because I like female action heroes when they're done right. Now, so much of the conversation has just become to bash female action heroes. And I think some of that speaks to how the culture is changing and how people are becoming more divided and how conversations are becoming more volatile. What's been posted around lately is that if Ellen Ripley came out today in a movie, then she would get hate. And some people have laughed them off of, no, that would never happen. I actually 100% believe that if Ellen Ripley Alien came out today just as it did in the 70s, then Ellen Ripley would get hate, at least from a certain group of people. Maybe it wouldn't be the majority, but there would be a certain group of people hating on her as a female action hero. And there's two ways of looking at that. Are people in control of their own emotions and their own thoughts on this stuff? Yes, they are. And I don't condone people taking the criticism against female action heroes so far and making it out like that is inherently a problem. But there is another side of this story. Yes, the people who are taking the criticisms too far should not be condoned, and I would criticize them. But also, I'm questioning, isn't this like the ultimate result of the push of the strong female hero poking the bear, so to speak? What they've done essentially with their push of the strong female character and putting them in so many bad movies and not listening to criticism, having people who don't know how to handle these characters work on them, being so concerned with having female characters be perfect and unproblematic that they have no character, is that they've made this pendulum swing too far back the other way. Now, strong female characters, female action heroes, are being associated with bad quality. When you've made female action heroes be associated with horrible movies, then people aren't going to help but have a knee-jerk reaction whenever they see that even remote similar marketing these days. And that is the difference of what you didn't have in the era that Ellen Ripley and Sarah Connor were coming out. They were new characters. They were pushing the boundaries. They were getting new kinds of female action heroes in theaters, and you didn't have this stigma of bad writing around them. But now you do, and that is on Hollywood. The more you go,
yes,
the more people will roll their eyes at these female action heroes and just expect something bad, something bland. And I think, and I'll talk about this more later in the video, I think that the push for strong female heroes is going to make it harder to get actual good female action heroes out there, because the female action hero is being associated with bad quality, and to the Hollywood business people who are just looking at the money, the female action hero might become associated with bad business. And we already saw that with Madam Web, where they started to completely write off the idea of female action heroes. We saw that with the Marvels, where people on both sides were completely writing off the idea of the female action hero in general, saying that for whatever reason or another, people must just hate the female action hero, as if it wasn't just a problem with writing quality in the first place, because we have had great and successful female action characters and movies in the past. This is the ultimate result of the strong female character push. They've made people associated with bad quality, and that is probably the worst thing that you could have done. It is going to make it a lot harder for other people, other writers, to try to get actual good female characters, strong female characters made in good faith out into the ether, because now you've made a negative stigma around it. However, as we're talking about that, as the strong female Mary Sue archetype goes away, there are still restrictions on female characters to be unproblematic. That is the best way that I'm going to put it. To be stereotypically strong and tough, even if it's not on the same level of it as it was before. And once again, that is going to lead to problems, and it has led to problems in movies. And so I just want to break that down a bit and talk about the various female characters I've seen in the past year, and how these restrictions are still on these characters, and how this nonsense just continues. Let's talk about Chani. Dune Part 2's Chani. Chani frustrates me. She frustrates me a whole lot. She frustrates me so much that she was 75% of the original reason I thought about making this video. Because Dune Part 2 is such an amazing film, one of the best films of the year, and such an artistic film as well. But there was one part of the film that bothered me ever since I watched it in the theater, and I wonder if people maybe weren't as willing to talk about it as much when the movie came out, because it's Dune Part 2. It's amazing, and sometimes when a movie does so much right, then people don't want to admit any flaws in it at all. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I just wondered, because here's my problem with Chani. First of all, we get a romance in the movie, and I've talked about before how romance seems to be even more of a scarce thing in films lately, but we get this romance. And when Chani starts out in the films, though, she doesn't like Paul. She doesn't trust him. He's an outsider. She also is very, very condescending and belittling to him.
They say you're the Mahdi, but you look like a little boy.
She makes fun of him. She talks down to him. She tries to help him, but it's always in the sense of talking down to him. And then he falls for her, and she falls for him. Why? I don't get it. I don't understand. This is the exact same thing that they did with MJ, played by Zendaya, and Tom Holland in the first two Spider-Man films. They didn't do it in Spider-Man No Way Home. They kind of fixed her character there, but initially with MJ and Spider-Man the MCU, all she does is belittle him and make fun of him. Yet he's in love with her.
Too late. You guys are losers.
I have a plan.
And I'm like, that's not really a great romance. That's not really any motivation I see. And it's sort of the same old relationship. And it's not very romantic. Whipped mama's boy and condescending girlfriend is not a good dynamic. I don't get the chemistry between these two characters, even though I think the actors are really good. I don't get why they come together. And there's an element in here, and this is not in the books. I'll talk about the books in a second. But there's an element in here where Chani does not trust Paul as the Messiah. She is vehemently against that. She sees him as a vehicle for these false prophecies used to enslave her people. Once again, I'm not really understanding why these two characters are interested in each other. But I could overlook all of that. What really, really bothered me is how the movie ended. Because this entire movie is about Paul worried about his fall, being corrupted by power, worried about the future. But then the way the movie ends, we get a shot of Chani running away and a shot of her reaction to all of this. And I'm wondering why. Paul is the character that I've been with for the entire movie. If the movie is going to end, I want to see his reaction, not hers. But there's more to this if you read the books. Now, Chani's role in the books is essentially Padme Amidala. That's not an exaggeration. She literally is just Padme Amidala. It's literally based, Star Wars is literally based off of this. Paul falls in love with Chani, and she, in the books, is actually very supportive of the idea of him as the Messiah. The way the book ends, Paul agrees to marry Princess Arulin as merely a political ploy, says that he will not treat her as his wife, that he will not even look at her in any way that shows affection or lust or anything like that, and that Chani, as his officially titled concubine, is the person who's actually going to serve as his wife. And it ends with Lady Jessica saying that while they are officially titled concubines, history will see them as wives. So that's how the book ends. But it's important because in the sequel, in very Revenge of the Sith style, what happens is Chani gets pregnant and she dies in childbirth, and that is the thing that pushes Paul over to the ultimate end of the dark side. So that's what Dune Messiah is all about. And so at this point you might be wondering, but the movie ends with none of that talk from Lady Jessica and Chani running away, and that was my other problem with it, because number one, the movie is all about Paul. I want to see, it's about his concern about him falling away to the dark side, being corrupted by power, the future that he brings on. So I want to see his reaction as the movie closes out, but we get a reaction from Chani, and it doesn't make any sense to me. Why would you end with this supporting character rather than Paul? And exactly what is Dune Messiah going to be about, since they literally changed key things that would directly contradict everything that Dune Messiah is about? So let's talk about the reasons why things were changed. First of all, official word from Denis Villeneuve was that Chani was skeptical of Paul so that people would know that what Paul was doing was bad. That is so stupid to me, because Dune Part 2 is professing to be a smarter film, a more highbrow film. We don't need to have a character hold our hand and tell us Paul's actions are bad. We know they're bad. We know objectively they're bad. Paul himself is fearful about what he is going to come. We didn't need that for it. Now, why did they make other changes to the story? Well, I think it's fairly obvious, because Chani was a stereotypical love interest in the books. She was a warrior, but she didn't get a lot of time. To have her be the one who just bears Paul's children and dies, and who serves this role of love interest, would not be a good look in 2024. However, as I'm looking at this movie, as they were trying to change it, and you can make updates to books and changes in movies and have it still work out, but that's not exactly what I'm seeing in this movie, because what I was talking about in the beginning is I don't buy Chani and Paul's connection. I don't think they have a lot of chemistry because of the condescending take that they took with Chani, just like they did with MJ. I don't believe that they'd be together based on her skepticism of him as the Messiah, Messiah. I don't know what the attraction there is. And then the ending actually took out a good moment from the books where Lady Jessica reaffirms the importance of her and Chani's role in all of this. They took that out and they had the movie not end on Paul, but end on Chani, and then end in a way where I'm wondering, okay, you can make these changes, but you're changing things so fundamentally from the books. I'm just wondering, what is Dune Messiah gonna even be about? Now, there is that line in the movie about how Paul foresees that Chani will come around, so maybe they'll do something there. And I hope that Dune Messiah, I want to have faith in what they're going to do, but it just seems like a lot of finagling just to make sure that they don't have to do with the stereotypical love interest version of Chani in the first place. Like, once again, finagling from Hollywood to make sure that we don't see anything offensive or problematic. And I am all for making changes if they improve on a story or if they make it better in any way, but I just didn't think that these changes really did that. They just sort of messed up the story a little bit in my eyes. And as a woman, I don't need my hand to be held. I want there to be strong female characters. I want there to be weak female characters. There can be female characters who play the role of the love interest, just as there are male characters out there who play the role of the love interest. What I'm all advocating for is diversity of female characters, meaning I want there to be all kinds of female characters. And if you see a story of a character where they're not more in terms of characterization than just the love interest and you can improve in that, once again, great. But I also don't demand it. I don't need Chani to be the skeptic to hold my hand through the story of Dune so that I understand Paul's actions are bad. I just feel like I'm being pandered to a bit by this and that I'm being talked down to a bit by this as if I couldn't handle it. And it's also a little bit funny to do it in the world of Dune because I understand that Dune is a world where there's a lot of corruption and there's plenty of powerful female characters who pull strings and have a lot of power of their own, but you don't need to have every female character do that if you've disrupted the story. One, I don't mind that they wanted to make changes to this, but at the same time, I just feel like they failed and they fell on their face with it, and I feel like these were once again motivated more by fear of how Chani would be perceived than actual intelligence on how they were going to make these changes. And with Chani, we continue to see these sorts of restrictions on female characters and the kinds of stories that they can have told and how they can be portrayed. She's not the only example I can pull from mainstream blockbusters this year. And another example of that would be the movie Twisters that came out. Now, Twisters, I watched it and I thought it was really, really boring. Other people liked it. That's fine. But we do have to talk about the female character in this movie because, once again, she is not made into the stereotypical one-dimensional strong female cutout. She is a strong person, but she is given her own arc in the film. She is given her own flaws. She's given her own backstory. In other words, they actually went back to how you should be telling stories for female characters, treating them as people, giving them development, and I thought that that was good. It was very, very simply told story for this female character. For this one, I didn't hear any complaints on it, except for one thing. Now, Twisters is trying to be like a classic Hollywood movie. You've got the hot male lead, you've got the hot female lead, and you can tell that they're into each other, you know? And you expect at the end that there's probably going to be a kiss between them, and you roll your eyes because you know, oh, that's always got to happen. But I was taken aback in the movie because I'm like, okay, she runs back to him, here's the kiss scene, and then, fripp, nothing. What? 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 Like this is your Hollywood movie, traditional Hollywood movie. Hot lead, women are going crazy over Glenn Powell. You've got the hot female lead, and then you're building up the kiss scene, and then nothing happens. So what is going on here? Now, there was supposed to be an ending kiss scene in Twisters. In fact, there are photographic and video footage of this. But, however, you know, people were a little mixed on it in the test screenings, apparently. But the ultimate reason why it was cut is producers like Steven Spielberg pushed in and wanted it out. The reason why it was cut, and there was a little conversation in these articles about, are people, you know, into the cheap romantic stuff as much as they used to be? Do they want it to be built up more? Do they want it to feel more earned? If you're talking about if you've earned, you know, the big kiss scene at the end, then that's fine. There was certainly a lot of overuse of the trope in the past. My problem is what they said about the reason why they ultimately cut the kiss scene is because they worried it would take away the female character's agency. There we go again with that word agency being misused. Okay. Why is it, and we obviously still get these scenes in movies, why is if a female character wants to kiss her love interest in a movie, that takes away her agency? That is the biggest, most nonsensical thing I have ever heard. And despite Hollywood's attempts to be like, oh, we don't want to be labeled as sexist, that actually sounds sexist. Like, because I was thinking back through all these movies, I'm like, there's still kiss scenes in movies. I'm like, is it okay if it's a male story and they get a kiss scene? And when it's a female story, oh, if she gets a love interest, if she does a kiss scene, then that takes away her agency.
A kiss? Oh no, no, anything but that. Anything but a kiss.
Why can't a female character have her journey to get what she wants and also have a love interest and have the kiss scene at the end? That makes no sense to me. And I went from somebody who was just like, oh, you know, they got to do the kiss scene trope, to somebody who is going back to just let them kiss already, because I'm hearing this nonsense behind the scenes that somehow having the payoff to this relationship was going to take away the female character's agency. And the thing is, people got upset about this, but guess who it was who got upset about this? It was the women in the audience who were upset and tweeting about this, that they didn't get that payoff at the end, because that's what they wanted. And so you're doing this for the women in the audience, presumably, but that's not what they actually want. This is what happened last year with Wish, and that's another female character we can go through. Asha, not a strong female archetype at all. She does have her own flaws, but she is a pretty bland character. It's been gone into how she's like the quirky Disney princess stereotype. Like, there's nothing that makes her stand out from anywhere else. And they've removed her story that was originally supposed to be a romance with her and Starboy. And there has been such a fan base that came out online for that original version of Wish. There is more of a fan base around the original concepts of Wish than there is for the movie, and a lot of it is the female audience, because they like that kind of stuff and they like it when it's done right. But they removed it because female character can't be strong if she has a love interest. I guess that is the thought process, and that is just so stupid. Why is it, once again, why is it okay if a male character has a love interest, a female character cannot, or she loses her agency? As if having any emotional attachment to a love interest means that a female character has her agency taken away. That's what you're saying. The only way for a female character to have agency, if she doesn't have any emotional attachment to, presumably, a male character, as if they aren't strong enough to be their own individuals and have other relationships as well. That is just such nonsense to me that they do this. And what I want to point out, importantly, you're actually taking away, you say you're doing this for women, but you're taking away the kinds of stories that women want to see. Like, I'm not going to lose sleep over Twisters not having the kiss scene at the end, because I wasn't a big fan of the movie, but I see all these other women who wanted to see it, and I'm like, you're just taking away what the actual audience for this movie wanted to see because you're afraid, and it doesn't actually come from being inspired of these stories or thinking about what women actually want to see. You're just afraid about what some people in the audience might think, what they might say. But in the midst of all of this nonsense of nitpicking these stories of female characters and just so concerned with being unproblematic, that's the main term that I can go with. And in the midst of doing that, we're seeing the actual strong female characters. What I'm talking about is the ones that were well written, the ones that were independent and that did have a feistiness to them, and that were people that you could root for, and that were actual complicated characters being taken down by this mindset, as simply as I can put it. One of those examples is Avatar: The Last Bender. The cartoon series is just a great series of actual strong female characters, from Katara to Toph to having a strong villain. Not that she's a strong person, but a great villain in Azula. And then you see the Avatar: Last Airbender live action show, and they were so afraid. They didn't want any of the sexism that is depicted in the original show to be portrayed in the new live action version. So Sokka couldn't be his teenage boy version of sexist. You couldn't have the sexism of the the water tribe. Even though the sexism in the original show of Avatar The Last Airbender was portrayed as a bad thing. But no, they couldn't have it in the new show because that would be offensive. Even depicting a bad thing as bad is just too offensive. You can't even go and show that sort of behavior anymore because it might offend somebody. But what happened in the show is because in the original version of The Last Airbender, the reason why sexism was depicted is so you could have feminist commentary, and that's what we saw with the female characters. You had Katara being a character who was trying to push back against the sexist traditions of her culture and show that she could be a formidable waterbender and a formidable warrior, and that is where a lot of her toughness came from. That's where a lot of the character moments in the show came from. That was where Katara was angry at Sokka for being a sexist, and that is why she freed the Avatar. And you get a great moment at the end of the original cartoon where she fights the leader of the Water Tribe, and while she doesn't defeat him, she is able to change his mind as he's remembering stories about him and her grandmother, and he sees where his negative actions lead. And you had to have the sexism in the show in order to explore all that, but what happens in the new show is because you don't have that element for Katara to push back against, she actually became a far more subdued character. She didn't have her immature brother to try to push back against because he was far more mature in this series. So she doesn't push back against him. She does not have that toughness she used to have. She does not have the sexism and the bigotry of the Water Tribe to have to fight against. So she becomes a much weaker character in terms of her personality.
You are an excellent waterbender.
But you still won't teach me, will you?
No.
You're an excellent waterbender.
But you still won't let me fight.
No.
This fight is over.
Come back here! I'm not finished yet!
And it's like, you had a good character, you had a good, strong female character that had been well written all this time, and you're so afraid of depicting sexism, and you're so concerned, supposedly, at the depictions of these female characters in a positive light. You actually ruined the strong female character in this, and you changed her to a much more subdued version of herself, a much weaker version of herself. You removed the feminist commentary from Avatar The Last Airbender, and it was a good show with a good commentary, a good way of exploring those aspects back in the early 2000s, but now it is too offensive for a live-action show on Netflix, and that just shows me the people working on this don't actually care about creating strong female characters. Like, where was the concern about actually removing the elements of strength to this female character? No, it was about being unproblematic. It was about not doing anything offensive. And it's like, you couldn't realize what you were doing to this actual strong female character by doing this. Like, I'm wondering, how is Toph going to be portrayed in the show? Because, you know, Toph had that element as well, where she was a little blind girl and all the other earthbenders underestimated her, but she was actually the most powerful at all, and her blindness actually enhanced her ability. And I want it, that's my favorite character from the show, well, apart from Zuko, but one of my favorite characters from the show, and I'm like, are you going to do her right? Or are things going to have to be changed now because of all of the changes that you're making for this show? And Suki, that's a character in the show that's a warrior and put Sokka in his place and forced him to grow in the original series, but that's removed too. After all the push from Hollywood, supposedly to have feminist characters, feminist storyline, strong female characters, they're actually removing the strong female characters now. And here's the thing, with all of this negativity towards female action heroes these days that has been started by the horrible characters like Captain Marvel, and I think that she's like the peak version, the one that everyone thinks of, and all of the negativity against female action heroes in general, as a result of that, I was always like, you know, what you need to do to fight against this stigma, because I do want there to be strong female characters and weak female characters and everything in between, but I do like the female action heroes too, and I just want them to be well written. And there are so many good characters. Like I said, Toph is a great example of a strong female character. So many good, actually strong female characters to be used in media that just need to be done right. And I think if that happened, then ultimately all people want is a good story, all that people want is relatable characters, and anyone can be relatable if done right. I would say just get good strong female characters out there in order to fight against that. And one of the characters I was really, really rooting for in terms of being a strong female character to be depicted in media is my favorite female superhero of all time is Rogue, obviously. I absolutely love that character, and she has such an amazing backstory. And earlier this year, I was really, really advocating for her and saying that, you want a good, strong female character, you get Rogue in there because, she's supposed to take Captain Marvel's powers, and she's supposed to have this whole journey of herself. And she is strong, but she also has flaws. She is perfect. And I was just really, really advocating for this character hard. I'm like, she could be the lead if you wanted to. You don't have to, but she could definitely carry the lead of an X-Men movie if you wanted to do that. But imagine my disappointment this year when we finally got some more content from her outside of the comics, and what we got was X-Men 97's version. And the female characters in general, I'd say, would get the short end of the stick in the show, which is why I thought that guy's comment about them getting too much focus was a little ridiculous. Like, Jubilee, Storm, a lot of the female characters' storylines are botched. Jean Grey got a moment that was thrown in there that I thought just made her really look bad, and it was weird that they would do that. I even had someone write to me saying that maybe Beau DeMayo, the writer, doesn't really get female characters. He doesn't really know how to do them. Maybe that's not his strong part. But the thing is, I wouldn't say that any of the other female characters in the show are destroyed other than Rogue. And just imagine how I felt when I saw this. I want to show you guys something. If you watch the original 90s show, and you get this great arc in the beginning where Rogue is tempted to give up her powers because she's decided it's just not worth it to never know what it's like to touch another human being, to just be isolated forever. And it's this amazing arc in the beginning of the show where she is tempted, but she ultimately realizes that her powers and what she can do for other people are more important than her isolation. They're more important because she cares about being able to protect other people more than she does her pain ultimately. And then you get this amazing episode coming after that where she goes alone and has to fight against Apocalypse, and she uses her absorption powers, and she is the only one who is able to absorb Archangel, literally absorb the evil out of him. And in the end, she reveals that she just made the evil a part of herself.
Don't worry. I took the evil away when I touched you. It's a part of me now.
I just hope you're strong enough to control it. I wasn't.
And she has to deal with that forever after that. She has to deal with it forever, constantly. And he says, I hope you're better at dealing with this than me. And yes, there is an episode where she backslides a little bit because she doesn't realize that it's his memories that are affecting her. But think about this. She has to live with his memories 24/7, all that evil. And she is a character who does not like being bossed around by men. There's actually a line about that in the show. And that is something that you see very prominently in the comics. She is incredibly headstrong. She is incredibly feisty. She is very distrusting. These are very core elements of the character. Yes, she was on the bad side, but she was never evil. She was never an evil character. That is made explicitly clear. If you want a great exploration of who this character used to be and who she came into, watch X-Men Evolution. That is a wonderful character arc for the character, and it just explains she was misguided by this woman who acted as her mother. She was groomed. She didn't know who the good guys were. She didn't believe any of this stupid brotherhood ideology. She was always a good person herself. And as soon as she realized she was groomed, she broke free of all of that because she was always a good person at heart. And when she took Carol Danvers' powers and had to live with her every single day, realizing the person whose life she had stolen, that made it so she never wanted to do that to anyone. She never wanted to hurt anyone like that again. And that is such a huge catharsis for the character, and why she would never turn back to the dark side, and why in comics you have her as such a hopeful character who is currently leading the X-Men and carrying out Charles Xavier's dream in the current comic series that's come out. Now imagine my surprise when we get X-Men 97 and we get this character who has been seduced by Magneto, and they don't portray it as a bad thing. No, I read the commentary from Beau DeMayo. He does not think that this Magneto-Rogue relationship is a bad thing, as much as people say, oh, it's fine, it's portrayed as a bad thing. No, it's not. Not according to the showrunner, the former showrunner. He actually liked this thing. You portray her as someone someone subdued, weak. Somebody falls for, recognizes that Magneto is manipulating her and then instantly falls for that again. There is no way that Rogue would do that, not even for touch. No, I have read all of this from the character. She wouldn't do that. She already had an arc in the original animated show about being tempted by a former boyfriend who she thought she could touch. It was implied she was kind of under mind control, but that was a far less creepy way to explore that than whatever Magneto relationship she's got going on over here. I don't know why they had her touch Magneto in front of Gambit, knowing how he would feel about it. Like, this is the character who went insane when he was lost in X-Men, the animated series, where she was worried he was going to leave them. She would do anything to save him. She's not going to dump him in a day over touch after she already had multiple arcs learning that there is more to things than touch. What got me about the show, what really killed it for me, is not only did they not believe that that relationship was in any way a bad thing, but they made her disparage her friends, the people she's supposed to believe are her one true family, blame them for things they didn't do, and join her groomer out of her supposed grief for the guy that she broke the person she's upset over dying's heart over. And people defended it saying, well, she's always been evil. No, she hasn't always been evil. This is a character who was never evil. This is a character who was so good that she had to live with someone else's evil for so long, and she was better at handling it. This tie-in comic to X-Men 97 sums up the character right here better than anything in the show ever did. But the thing that got me most mad about the show is when they reversed her downturn in the end. They reversed her from going evil, and they don't even resolve it. They don't even give her an end to this arc of her going crazy. They just forget about it in the next episode because it was convenient. And I'm like, how can you be so careless with this character that you tear down their character and their story in short order and then forget about it when it's convenient? Like, you didn't know what to do with this character, so you just threw stuff out and then moved on. And that is just such careless writing to a character that I've loved for so many years and that I actually knew was a strong female character, an actually strong female character. And this show regressed her character so much just to facilitate a gross storyline. And I'm like, if this had happened 5 years ago or 10 years ago, this would 100% have been something that people would have gotten upset over, because this was an actual strong female character that you tarnished and destroyed. But like, fans like me were upset about it, but there wasn't massive controversy. And I wondered, as I was criticizing this version of the character, like, how seriously are people going to take me? Because for so long, the big criticism against writing for female characters has been the strong female character. It's been fighting against this idea that every female character has to be strong and that these female cardboard cutout feminist archetypes are what we have to accept. There's been so much fighting against that. I'm like, how can people take me seriously when I'm saying the problem with this female character is that she's not strong anymore, when that is what the character is supposed to be and what I know her to be? Like, the conversation around that I think has been kind of destroyed, and it's made me think, as much as I think that we need strong female characters going forward, how much is a company like Marvel or any of these companies going to take that seriously now and actually care about the writing of their female characters? Because once again, all of this negativity about female action heroes and strong female characters has been catching on, and we're gradually just seeing things shift around where the Mary Sue archetype is being criticized and the female action hero just has this negative stigma around it now. We still have restrictions on how female characters are being written, though, and now I'm seeing the ultimate result is I think that maybe people just are stopping to care about the whole female action hero in general and not care about the fact that was the problem all along, the bad writing, but just see strong female character is bad business, so let's not even care about writing these characters at all. And that makes me disappointed because, listen, my favorite female character all the time is not a strong female character, but for a character like Rogue, she is a strong female character. I mean, an actually strong female character. And the reason why I'm upset about her writing is not because I want all female characters to be strong, but because she was supposed to be strong. And I don't want that to be destroyed, but Hollywood has just made conditions for writing female characters worse than ever. We were getting a lot of ground with female action heroes for years, and it used to be normal and not ridiculed to have a little feminist statement in your films. But now that's getting more and more hate, and the female action hero has just become associated with bad quality. But even as we move away from the Mary Sue archetype, we still see restrictions and nitpicks, like something as simple as a kiss being weighed down on female characters. And this kind of nitpicking and storytelling is only going to make it even harder to tell dynamic stories for female characters in the future. We can already see it happening with a character like Katara being reduced and weakened as a female character as the showrunners thought they were following the rules, or with a character that I care about being regressed and in a very sloppily told story, but no one seems to care. Now I wonder if there will be any care in portraying female heroes at all in the future, or if they'll just be put in the back burner and have no one care about their writing at all, because the idea of the strong female character has been so tainted and associated with bad business, ignoring what the actual problem was all along: bad writing. And why should I care? Because there's so many good female characters that I want to see done right, whether strong or weak. What makes a character great is always up to the individual character, and I just wish we could understand that and not have these sort of misguided idea of what makes a character well written, not lead to continue to restrict the kinds of stories we can tell with female characters, but also not lead us to actually make the strong female characters weaker. The problem, I think, though, at the core of this entire mess is always the same, that we don't have people behind the scenes allowed to work on these characters that actually understand them. And I just wish that that would change, because I see this kind of thing getting worse in the future if things don't change. The restrictions on female characters and the walking on eggshells around them is only making things worse. It's only regressing us. The days of Sarah Connor and Ellen Ripley, breaking down walls and actually showing how great a strong female character to be have been regressed, because now people automatically look at strong female characters with disdain because of all that has happened. And I don't want that to happen, because once again, there's still so many great female characters I want to see. I don't want the weak female characters to have to be stamped out so we can't explore flawed characters. I don't want the actual strong female characters to be stamped out either. And the ultimate answer is to get good writers in there who actually care about these characters, no matter who they're supposed to be as individuals, and just care about giving them the best writing possible. Just to end on a positive note, there was a movie I really loved this year, Inside Out 2. It's not a movie that portrays strong female characters or weak female characters, just the complexity of a teenage girl's mind, and I just thought it was really great, and the emotions that were portrayed in that movie was great, so I really liked seeing that depiction of female characters. I am also really looking forward to this year to seeing Arcane Season 2, because that had great female characters, that you had strong female characters and weak female characters, and just showing the strengths and weaknesses of these characters together to just make them very interesting. Arcane Season 1, I think, was just a great way to see how great female characters can be when they're written right, and it's one that shut down all the naysayers who don't like strong female characters or who criticize these women in media in general, because the characters were just so great. And if you have good writing behind female characters, then they can be relating to everybody in general, and you don't have to have all of this nonsense behind them. You can just have people enjoy and empathize with the characters, and that's what I really want to get to. And by doing that, if you're really trying to appeal to female audiences, you're going to get characters that they like and empathize with too. Well, this was a very, very long video, and I think it's the longest video ever on my channel, but thank you guys all so much for watching. These were so many thoughts that have been on my mind for months, just compiled in this video, and once again, thank you for tuning in. I do all of this myself. The scripting is myself, the editing is myself, my thoughts are my own, and I do this as my job. So if you want to support me so I can keep doing this, you can check out the link to my Patreon in the description, as these wonderful 8 people support me already on here. You can consider if you would like to as well. You get some exclusive content behind the scenes there. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys next time with hopefully better female characters. Bye!